So these past few weeks of Lent, we've been exploring the theme, everything in between, as we've heard these stories of Jesus that call us to look beyond an either-or set of extremes and consider that the truth may be somewhere in between. Or, even more radically, the truth may be both at the same time. 2 weeks ago, in the story of Mary and Martha, we considered faith and works, or contemplation and action, which are often pitted against each other, when actually they go hand in hand. Last week, with the parable of the fig tree, we thought about rest and growth, and how a rhythm of both are needed in the life of discipleship. Part of why I've enjoyed this series so much, I think, is because Lutherans love them a good paradox. I'm no exception. I've talked about this shirt before. I'll talk about it again, but I brought it this morning. It says, and. I know it's kind of hard to see the lettering, but it's just A-N-D period, and. And I got this shirt probably close to 20 years ago when I was taking a group of youth to see a concert for a band that I had enjoyed seeing when I was in college in the 90s, and they thought I was old and weird, but they ended up liking the concert too. And it was a band called Lost and Found. And that day, they were talking about their shirts. They were wearing these and shirts, and they said, this is what we're about as God's people, is these paradoxes. We talk about law and gospel. We talk about being 100% sinner and 100% saint at the same time. We talk about how we're both bound and free. The and is where a lot of life happens. And they said, so we know that we are both lost and found. And we wanted to highlight that. And then they said, also, we just wanted a shirt that had our middle name on it. So I thought that was great. I bought the shirt. I love wearing it around town. People will come up to me and say, and? And I get to tell them about this great idea of our faith being paradoxes. And some people are more excited about that than others. But, was Jesus fully God or fully human? Yes. Is what we eat at communion bread or Jesus' body? Yes. And it's in the tension of these paradoxes, that space where we're holding two seemingly contradictory things as somehow both true. It's in that tension that we live our life of faith. Faith is so often here in the and. And these kind of paradoxes help us explore the nuances of life and faith, and in many ways, the limitations of our own understanding. So it's with that energy of that tension that we approach today's parable. And yes, it is not a coincidence that both paradox and parable have the same beginning. For the word nerds out there, in Greek, para means beside or alongside or beyond. So a paradox, dox is thinking, so a paradox is thinking about things alongside each other. And a parable literally means throwing beside. So you're throwing two things together and seeing the comparison. Jesus' parables are a comparison between something about God, or God's kingdom, and something about the world. They're meant to ignite our imagination and challenge us or invite us into a new or deeper experience of God's reign or dominion. As one scholar says, at its simplest, the parable is a metaphor or simile drawn from nature or common life, arresting the hearer by its vividness or strangeness, and leaving the mind in sufficient doubt about its precise application to tease it into active thought. parables tease us into thinking actively about who God is and who we are. Another scholar says parables are complex literary hand grenades that invite us to look at their various layers of meaning to see what we can glean from them about the kingdom of God. So I gave this long setup here today because I think it's tempting for those who have heard these familiar stories from Jesus before to think that the common interpretation of that text is really the only meaning that can be gleaned from it, rather than realizing these are meant to tease our imagination. These are meant to give us layers of meaning. We are meant to dwell with this story and see what comes out. So I think in a lot of ways, we're called invited to treat parables kind of like that precious jewel, right? That as you turn it, hold it up and turn it, you see different facets and you see the different ways that the light shines through. So like a few weeks ago with the Good Samaritan story, we talked about how when we read it, we often tend to put ourselves in the role of the Samaritan, right? And we think, okay, so what this story means is I need to help people who need help, right? I need to be that Good Samaritan. But we saw how the light changed a bit when instead we asked, but what if we're the one in the ditch? So let's think now together about sheep and the people who lose them and the people who find them. Which one of you, Jesus asks, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? Okay, so traditional interpretation would say we're the sheep, right? And God is the shepherd, and when we get lost, God goes to crazy measures to come and find us. That is a good interpretation of this text. I've heard sermons like that before. I've preached sermons like that before. I just did with our kids. That is one layer of this story that can be really meaningful. Now, a variation on that is if we think of ourselves as being one of the 99 sheep that are left behind. We are the ones who know Jesus and follow Jesus. And there are these poor lost souls out there who God is going to find and bring back. And when God does that, we need to celebrate. There's some truth in that facet, right? But it can also lead to some problematic interpretations if we think of ourselves as the insiders who know the right path, and those losers can't find their way, but yeah, we'll be glad when they finally join us on the right path. I don't think that's what Jesus is trying to convey. But what if we put ourselves in this story as the one who cares for the sheep? The one who counts the sheep to make sure they're all there. That's actually where Jesus puts us. He says, which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not go after the lost one? Scholar Amy Jill Levine also points out that it doesn't totally make sense to have that figure in the story be God anyway, because it implies that God loses people, that God is careless enough to miss that there's one gone. And maybe with the sheep metaphor, we can say, well, I mean, it's not the shepherd's fault if someone wanders away. Sheep can wander. But the very next story that Jesus tells us is about a woman who has 10 coins, and she loses one of them. So she lights a lamp, sweeps the house, and searches carefully until she finds it. And when she has found it, Jesus says she too calls together her friends and neighbors and says, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." So, true, sheep may wander away, but generally speaking, coins do not, of their own volition, get up and walk away. When I lose my keys, which I do all the time, I don't blame the keys. All right, well, sometimes I try to. But I know it's not really their fault, right? It's my fault. I lost my keys. I've been careless. I've not paid attention to where I've put them. I've not paid attention to something that's important. Remember, too, who Jesus was talking to when he told this parable. He was with the tax collectors and the sinners, but some of the religious elite were there too. They were listening in and grumbling, "Oh, this fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." I love that they don't even use Jesus' name. It's just this fellow, like, oh, that guy who hangs out with the people who screw up all the time. So they're grumbling. And Jesus says, hey, maybe you think that these people that I'm with don't count. Maybe you're okay counting the 99 sheep. You're good counting the 9 coins and saying, that's good enough. But in God's kingdom, everyone counts. And the community is not whole until our relationships are restored. Turning the story this way, letting light shine through this facet, I think prompts us to ask different questions of ourselves. How am I like the man who lost the sheep? How am I like the woman who lost the coin? Have I lost something or someone and not paid attention? Is there someone I take for granted? What or whom have I forgotten to count? And what might it look like for me to bear the burden of going out into the wilderness to seek that one that I've lost? What if in doing so I get lost? What might it look like for me to shoulder the burden in order to restore that relationship, like the shepherd who carries that heavy sheep home? Is that what repentance looks like? What might it look like for me to light a lamp into the dark places of my life and sweep the dusty corners of my house and seek to restore relationships in and through my community? And then what might it look like to celebrate when that which is lost is found? And where is God in all of this? Well, it appears he's sitting at the table, having dinner with those who we have allowed ourselves to lose, those who we have decided we are not going to count. And soon he'll go on his way and invite us to follow as he continues to go out and seek those who are lost, which may be, it turns out, us. And in a few weeks, we'll read the story of how we lost him, how humanity turned its back on Jesus and said he didn't count, and how he hung on the cross in between 2 other lost ones, 2 criminals, and said, "Today you will be with me in paradise. Today you are found." And then we'll see the women who went to find him, even when it was clear that all was lost, that he was dead and buried. And we'll see how they then encountered him, the one who was lost, but now is risen. And we'll see that nothing is lost to God. So, are we the one seeking, or are we the one being sought? Are we lost, or are we found? Yes. Our lives are lived in that and.